Hey guys, glad you're here for the help video for quiz 5.09. Alright, so here's what you need to know to be successful on this quiz. Isosceles triangles have two equal sides. So their two legs are equal length. And that also means that their two base angles are the same length. So in an isosceles triangle, you're going to have two congruent base angles and two congruent legs. Alright, in an equilateral triangle, all the sides are the same. So every single side length is going to be congruent, and all the angles have to be the same. And since the sum of the interior angles of a triangle is 180, if we divide that by 3, we know that each angle has to be 60 degrees. Alright, so let's start looking at the quiz. This one says, what is the value for y? Okay. So the first thing we need to do is we need to identify what kind of special triangle this is. And because it has two side markings, two of those sides are congruent. So we know that this is an isosceles triangle. Alright. Then if we know it's an isosceles triangle, we know the two base angles also have to be congruent. So because this angle is 50, this angle also has to be 50 degrees. The 2x is really just there to distract you. We don't want to use that at all because we're trying to solve for y. So that's a distractor. I'm going to mark out 2x. Okay, and now we need to solve for y. So remember, the sum of all the angles of a triangle adds up to 180. So we already know 50 and 50, so we could add those up and then subtract from 180. To figure out that this angle C has to equal 80 degrees. Okay, 80 degrees isn't our answer though. We still have to solve it for y, but now we have enough information to solve it because now we can set 80 equal to 5y plus 10. And then from here we can solve it. We can subtract 10 from each side, divide by 5, and y is going to equal something. Let me divide it. 14. So here our answer for y is 14. All right, let's look at the next one. Oops, I went too far. It says, what is the length of side BC? So our ultimate goal is to figure out this side length. Okay, and we have to look and try to figure out what kind of special triangle this is. And it tells us that these two base angles are congruent. If you have two base angles congruent, again, you have an isosceles triangle. So because we know those two base angles are congruent, we also know these two legs, those two side lengths, are congruent. So I can take these two legs and I can set them equal to each other. And at first you might be thinking, well, why are we doing that? We're trying to find BC. But we don't know enough information about BC yet. We're going to solve for x first, and then we'll go back and plug that in to figure out BC. Alright, so let's solve for x. I'm going to get all my x's on the same side. And then I need to subtract 7 from each side to try to get that x by itself. And divide everything by -2. So x equals 7. Now again, that's not our answer because remember, we're trying to find the length of BC. But now that we know x, we can go and plug that back in to figure out BC. So now we can say BC equals 4x. So I'm going to plug in 4 times 7. And we all know that 7 times 4 is 28. So BC equals 28 units. Alright, so this is another one that says, what is the length of BC? So again, our ultimate goal is to figure out this length. But we got to kind of do some digging first. We need to investigate, first of all, what kind of triangle is this? And notice those two base angles are the same. So again, it is an isosceles triangle. And if those two base angles are congruent, we also know that these two sides are congruent. the legs, as they call them, are congruent. So we're going to start off this problem the same way we did last time, where we're going to set this side equal to that side. And then we're going to solve for x. Anytime I don't see a number in front of x, I put a 1. And then I'm going to move all my x's to the same side. I'm going to add 24 to each side. And then I'm going to divide everything by 2. So x equals 11. But remember, my goal is to find the length of BC, so now I need to go back and plug it in. I just happen to get lucky here because when I plug it into BC, all I do is plug in the 11. So the length of BC here is 11. Okay, so let's check out this triangle. It says, what is the value for x? So here I'm just trying to solve for x. I'm not going to plug it back in to figure out a side length or an angle. I'm just going to solve for x. So then we need to look at our picture and figure out what kind of special triangle this is. And in this case, it tells us all 3 angles are congruent. If all 3 of them are the same, then we know it's an equilateral triangle. And in an equilateral triangle, we know all the sides are equal. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and mark all of these sides equal. So I actually don't need all 3 pieces of information. I just need 2 pieces of information. I need to pick 2 sides and I need to set them equal to each other. And it doesn't matter which 2 sides you pick because all 3 of them are the same. So I can even show you what would happen if you, depending on what side you picked. But let's say that I picked these 2 sides first and I set them equal. So if I solve it, and I know I'm solving kind of quickly, so if you need to go back and slow this video down or pause it or kind of follow along, feel free to do that. But if I set these 2 sides equal to each other, I get x equals 3. I just want to show you, if you had picked 2 different sides, let's say that you had done this side equal to that side. I just kind of want to show you that you're still going to end up, oops, that's a 2, with x equals 3. So it doesn't matter what 2 sides you pick. Just pick any 2 sides, set them equal to each other, and solve for x. So in this case, x equals 3. Okay, so here is our last one, and again, we need to look at our picture and try to pick out what kind of triangle this is. In this triangle, they've marked all 3 sides congruent. If all 3 sides are the same, I know it's an equilateral triangle. And when I have an equilateral triangle, not only do I know all the sides are the same, I also know all the angles are the same. So all 3 of those angles have to be congruent. The most common thing I see is people say, okay, I know angle Z has to equal angle Y, which is a true statement. So they set those equal to each other. But notice when you try to solve, you have x's and y's. And that does not help you. You're not going to be able to solve like that. Our ultimate goal is to find the value of x. In other words, this 5y is just a big distractor. It's not going to help us. So I'm going to get rid of 5y because it's not helpful. And then I'm going to ask myself, okay, well now how do I solve for x when I only know this one angle? Well, the thing is, in an equilateral triangle, you already know what every angle equals, right? There's 180 total degrees. All the angles have to be the same, so you can divide by 3. So each angle has to equal 60 degrees. So we could just take this one and set it equal to 60. And then we have a little bit of solving to do. So in this case, x would equal 32. And our goal was to find the value of x, so that is our answer. All right, good luck on your quiz.